Good evening and welcome to this regular session of the Lakeville Area Schools Board of Education. This meeting is officially called to order. Please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Board members in attendance tonight include Director Kelleher, Director Shinley, Director Lind, Chair Baker, Director Carly Anderson, Director David Anderson, Director Thompson. We are also joined by Superintendent Dr. Doug Van Zyl, members of the Executive Cabinet, Stephanie Cass, Bill Holmgren, Brenda Albrecht, Dr. Emily McDonald, and Dave Haveman. Now on to good news. Superintendent?
Thank you and good evening. This May, we've been celebrating Teacher Appreciation Month in Lakeville area schools. We're so grateful for our amazing teachers that we have in our district and the help that they ensure the success of all of our students. In celebration of National Teacher Appreciation Week, which took place May 8th through 12th, we asked some of our students what they were grateful for in their teachers and what they liked most about their teachers, and here's what they had to say. So here's a little video if you want to turn your attention to that.
I'm really thankful for all my teachers. They put in a lot of extra work for me to help me stay engaged in class.
They make the lessons really fun and easy to do.
It's wonderful how you teach me, how you're kind and patient on me, and I'm really grateful for that.
I'm very appreciative of how all our teachers will go out of the way to build a relationship up with the students and reach out if they feel like you need help with something.
I appreciate how helpful they are. Anytime I need help, they always come and help me when I need it.
My teachers, a lot of them understand how I work. So just understanding me as an individual and not like a number, seeing me as an individual is nice.
I really like when my teachers are supportive of me inside of school and outside, like my decisions that I make outside and inside of school.
So these past years, it's just been hard for me. But I've been thankful that I've had these really kind teachers.
First of all, I will say that I'm very thankful for them to be so patient with me, to not giving up with me.
I appreciate my teachers because they help me prepare for the world ahead of me.
I'm thankful for all the teachers who give their time just to help kids learn and be the best that they can be. I like how they're always there for you and something's going on with their family and you can talk to them.
Something I really like about my teachers is how passionate they are. They always seem so excited to teach and it makes learning really easy.
I like how my teacher, she takes time and helps us when we need help with a math problem.
I like dancing with my teacher.
One thing I like about my teacher is that he is really kind to everyone and helps them learn if they're having a bad day. He'll cheer them up and make them have the best day they can have.
I like my teacher because she is a very hard worker and she's very nice.
Something I like about my teachers is they're really nice and accepting, and if you're having a bad day, they'll notice and come talk to you.
In math, my teacher makes everything into games. In reading, she just lets us read a lot. I like reading. I like math. That's what I like about my teacher.
Something I like about my teachers is when they are very thoughtful, when they put their hard work into helping me become the best student I can.
I like my teacher because he really cares about us and he really wants to educate us.
I like when I walk in to my school and my teachers are there. Teachers out there, make sure you keep working hard, and also thank you.
Thank you so much for being there for me, especially when I need it most.
Thank you for always saying hi in the hallways, checking in on us.
I appreciate all the work you guys do. people here just do such a good job at getting to you and communicating to you and getting you getting your school done, basically. And I can't thank you guys enough for that.
I would just want to say thank you for spending your time to help me and other students learn.
I love my teacher.
Thank you for always helping me with everything.
I thank them for helping us learn all the important stuff we're gonna need in life one day.
Thank y'all so much. Shout out to all the teachers around the world. We love y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you for being my teacher.
I appreciate you.
Thanks for being my teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you for being my teacher. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you guys for what you guys do. Thank you for being my teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Them, not that it's not important for them to hear thanks from us, but the people that they impact on a daily basis, I think that's very meaningful. So again, thank you to all of our teachers and everything that they do, not just during this month of the year, but every month of the year. So we appreciate that. On to other good news. May was the 4th month of our Student of the Month recognition program. Students that are nominated by staff members who share with us just how amazing, smart, kind, and helpful our students are. May recipients were Kara Klumper, a 2nd grader at Lakeville Elementary, Rose Murrid, a 6th grader at Link 12 Online School, and Cecil Wilson, a 12th grader at Lakeville North. Also, congratulations to our Lakeville South High School 9th grade student, Alice Yee, for taking home first place award at the DECA International Career Development Conference, which took place April 22nd through 25th in Orlando, Florida. Alice won first place in the Principles of Business Management and Administration category, coming out ahead of students from schools across the country. DECA is a program that prepares our students for careers in marketing, finance, hospitality, and management. Way to go, Alice. Our Lakeville North speech students also had a great week during the last week in April. We had 4 students from Lakeville North speech team that made it to the finals in the 2023 Class AA speech tournament. Congratulations to Annika Goering for 4th place in the poetry reading, Madison Leverty for 4th place in storytelling, Aiden Claiborne for placing 6th in humorous interpretation, and Anna Baranchini for placing 7th in poetry. We also had some students compete in our National Individual Events Tournament of Champions. So we had students from Lakeville North team and Lakeville South speech team compete in the National Individual Events Tournament of Champions on May 12th through the 14th at Chanhassen High School. The NIETOC is one of the biggest, most competitive national school speech tournaments in which students need to qualify in order to compete. So congratulations to Lakeville North senior Gintara Pishkinata for competing at the national finalist in informative speaking and placing 5th out of 143 competitors. In addition, several students made it to the semifinals and quarterfinals and octafinals in their respective events, including Annika Bernachny, Avery Bartlett, Benjamin Mothbrand, Devin Defoe, Annika Goering, Amaya Kwaja, Alice Yee, Aiden Claiborne, Carissa Mutabi, and Ali Ranchi. Our AVID Award ceremony was held on Wednesday, May 17th. AVID stands for Advanced Via Individual Determination. The award ceremony recognizes the accomplishments of our 7th through 12th graders and what they've made, and our graduating seniors, AVID Scholar recipients and the highest GPA and All-Star Award winners. You can read more about these award ceremonies and see a list of all the scholarship and award winners on our website at isd194.org/news. On Wednesday, May 17th, Kenwood Trail 8th grade students had an opportunity to learn about in-demand careers from a community organizations at a Career Expo event. Lakeville South seniors Allie Taxtal and Brandon Witter planned and organized this event for their capstone project. During this planning process, they received support from Lakeville Area School staff and Lakeville Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to 13 local businesses who participated in this event, and you can also read more about this and see a full list of those who were involved at isd194.org/news. And finally, on May 19th, the Minnesota Elementary Principals Association presented Oak Hills Elementary School with its official Minnesota School of Excellence Award. Oak Hills Elementary was validated as a Minnesota School of Excellence last September for its commitment to modern teaching and learning. So a lot went on this month. Congratulations to all of our Good News folks.
Thanks for sharing that update. On to board communications, and we did not have any participants in the public engagement sessions this time, so we'll just move on to agenda additions. Do any board members have additions to the agenda tonight? Okay. Director Thompson?
Can I add an agenda topic for just kind of a budget the budget reduction update? I know it's been about a month since we've concluded and approved the budget. Be curious to know how things are progressing on some open items that haven't been resolved yet from, I think, the sale of the ALC building, some user fee collaborations. I'd like to add that as a topic for discussion.
Are you making a motion?
No, I'm sorry.
for
Yes,
that?
I'm making a motion
Sorry.
to talk about budget, just budget reduction updates.
Okay, do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
All right, so we have the motion by Director Thompson and a second by Director Shinley. We'll open the floor for discussion on that. Any further any discussion on those items? Okay,
Can I?
go ahead.
The question. Should we give time for, I mean, I don't know if you gave a heads up to Bill or, like, should we give time in terms of preparing?
Well,
that
I don't think I'm
information?
expecting a PowerPoint presentation, but just more of an update, like how are things going? I haven't heard anything over the past 30 days on how things are progressing. So that's just my thought.
I would recommend that we just add it to.
Director Kelleher, there you go.
I would recommend that we either add it to a work session as a topic, or just get an update in our weekly update from the superintendent. I don't think it needs to be added to this board meeting tonight.
Any other discussion on that? Director Lind?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that because this is kind of coming out of the blue, and I like the district to be able to be prepared to answer those questions. And I think probably a work session would be a more appropriate time for that topic.
Any further discussion? All right. Oh, Director Thompson?
Again, I'm not asking for a PowerPoint presentation, but if there are discussions and things underway, I think a quick update wouldn't be too challenging of an issue, but understand if you guys want to punt it to a working session instead.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
So motion fails to pass. Director Thompson, that is something I made a note of. I'll add it to our next working session so that Bill can get that information together and provide that to the board.
Okay.
All right. We'll move on for approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda tonight?
So moved.
We have a motion by Director Lind. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director David Anderson. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we'll move on for consideration and approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion by Director Carly Anderson, a second by Director Kelleher, and we'll open it up for discussion. Director Thompson?
Yeah, I'd like to pull three items off the consent agenda. I don't know where I do that.
We have to amend our motion now.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so
I make a motion to amend the agenda.
so sorry, what did you say?
You can pull those items and vote on the rest of the consent agenda, I think.
No, because we made a motion to approve all of the consent
Okay.
agenda, so we can rescind the motion.
Well, we have to make an amendment. He can make an amendment to it.
Okay. What were the three items
Let
that
me
you
make
wanted to pull?
motion to amend the agenda. I'd like to pull out item B and item I.
Whoops, sorry. All right, so we have an amendment to our original motion to pull out consent agenda items B and I. Do we need a second for that one? Yes. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Director David Anderson. Any other discussion on those two items? B and I. All right, so we'll go ahead and vote on the amendment to take off items B and I for further discussion from the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
So we have 5 yeses and 2 nos. Is that correct? Did you vote? I didn't hear. You voted no. Okay, so 4 yeses and 3 nos. Correct? Did you vote?
Yep.
No or yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Bree.
Okay, so now we're approving the consent agenda with the items pulled B and I. We have that original motion was by Director Carly Anderson and the second by Director Kelleher. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we'll move on to discussion of the consent agenda items that were pulled for discussion. So we'll start with B, which was employment recommendations, leave requests, and resignations. Director Thompson.
Yeah, so I'm looking through this list and I see quite a bit of resource staff changes. I was hoping to get a little bit more clarity on the 4 pages of those changes. I think I saw about 30 resignations, 16 of them from EML. Just curious because, again, newer to the process, but wanting to know, is this cyclical? Is this normal? Is it something? Just curious to get some feedback on that.
I'll have Brenda come forward, but I'll start first. You have to remember that you have EML contract and contracts with all of our associations that have to be followed. So anything that's happening as far as transferring positions, shuffling of positions, all have to follow the contract language. So it's fairly normal, but I would also imagine that in a budget reduction year, the positions that had to be reshuffled due to seniority caused the majority of that. But I'll let Brenda take it over from here if I misspoke.
Yes, I would agree. It's typical at the end of the school year to see a lot of movement. We do have people that decide to leave. We have people that decide to take different positions. We have with the budget cuts, we have a lot of shifting going on in the LEAF contract. So what you're seeing is pretty typical for the end of a school year.
Good, thank you. I know that part of the budget reductions, we decided to move as quickly as we could so that we could implement the process on the HR side to get requisitions out the door and get ads out there. I'm assuming that with these resignations that allows, are these going to be backfilled or are they positions that we're no longer going to?
It depends on the position.
Dr. Van Zyl.
You have to remember that there is, again, contract language. The positions had to be open at the time of the shuffle in order for people to move into those. Now that all the timing has taken place of period 1 where people could transfer positions, then they had another 7-day period to transfer again, and that ended today at 4 o'clock. So any positions that happened after that initial one were open positions because the resignations were not in the first shuffle. So again, it's very specific contract language that we have to follow, and Brenda works with EML and LEAF and any other of our associations that have contract language to make sure that that's followed. So we'll still get resignations and retirements between now and the end of the year, and we'll have to follow that process.
So then so do you anticipate lots of changes over the next couple months just because it's the end of the school year, or is it going to be?
Well, I haven't been in this district long enough to see what our summer turnover looks like, but I can tell you from other districts I have been in, there is typically movement still in the summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
In a district this size, there's usually quite a bit of movement, even throughout the year, just because people are looking for new roles and changes in their lives require changes in not any different than what any other corporate or organization would be doing to accommodate the staff.
Thank you. Again, for those in the community who happen to review the agenda, might ask also, hey, why are there 4 pages worth of changes? So, thank you. I do have a second question.
One more thing I would add, sorry to interrupt you, is that during the summer, and as we get through the hiring process, HR will be making some report to you about the hiring process and what that looks like. So you'll get some of that again. You're kind of getting the back end of things now. You'll get the front end of things as the hiring season winds down and we get ready to start school. So that process will get explained to you as well.
Well, and I also think not all of the personnel stuff is actually viewable for the public, right, because of data privacy. So isn't some of the stuff that the board members see protected by data privacy?
Yes, that would be
So
typically,
the community doesn't see all of it.
Right, that would be typically your certain types of leaves. We wouldn't put details in regarding what the leave is for.
No.
Director Thompson, did you have another question related to item B?
Yeah, I also see that we ended up bringing on board, or there is a new director of special services, and so that particular function has is a full FTE starting on 7/1. I was just hoping if you can share a little bit more of like what exactly is this role? Is it a backfill? Is it a new position? And what does the role do?
So this position is replacing a retirement. It is not a new position. Dave, if you want to come up and talk a little bit about what this position does.
Sure thing. Yeah, it does replace a retirement, as Brenda indicated. It ended up being budget neutral to the retirement that went out. It is within the range that we posted for the position, which is also in alignment with the market rate for positions of like kind in the Twin Cities area. And this position at the salary that we offered was also within the budget package that I presented to all of you at the time that we did our budget restructuring. So this is not going even $1 higher than what we had in our budget restructuring.
Okay.
It's just a different title, right?
What's that?
It's just a different title, right?
The title I was told was redone before I got here. So like the existing Director of Special Services has that title right now
Yes,
too,
she
and it
does.
happened before I arrived.
Okay, but a lot of it was special ed before.
It was special ed prior, and I think just before I came on, they had switched it to special services, and we're continuing that.
I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
Thank you. Director Thompson, do you have any further questions about item B?
Nope, it was one of those roles that I think warrants just additional conversation around what is it and for a leadership role, and I just wanted to learn more.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. All right, so do we have a motion to approve consent agenda item employment, or letter B, which would be employment recommendations, leave requests, and resignations?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Director Lind. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Thompson. Any further discussion around item B? Okay, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
So we have 2 noes and 5 yeses. Okay. All right, Director Thompson, so item I, which was policy updates, do you want to go forth your questions about that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that these 2 particular policy updates, 616 and 806, are recommendations from the administration for statutes updates and some grammatical changes. But in regards to the context of the language itself, nothing has changed, and just wanted to make sure that the community is aware of what we are approving.
Okay. Director Shinley, you attended the policy committee. Did you want to add any comments on that?
So when we were discussing at the administration meeting, we were talking about how when we get the proof of the policy, it looks really overwhelming because there's a lot of red line. And a lot of that red line is basically formatting and grammatical changes, like school board of education can be changed to, or school board changed to board of education, the things like that are being changed. So when we talked about it at the work session, we talked about if that would be okay for us just to approve that, not the meat and potatoes of the policy, but just to make sure we can get the formatting out of the way, so then we can get to what we really want to discuss within the policy. Is that?
Great job.
Thanks. Any further questions on those items, Director Thompson?
Nope.
Okay. So hearing that, we'll go ahead and move on to approving that. So do we have a motion to approve item I, policy updates?
So moved.
Motion by Director Carly Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director David Anderson. Any further discussion on item I? Okay, so we'll go ahead and put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we'll go into reports. Our first report is the legislative update. Bill Holmgren. I think we're all eager to hear about this one.
Madam Chair, members of the school board, Superintendent Van Zyl. Yes, tonight we're going to give you a legislative update. As you know, the legislative session was finished on Monday evening, so yesterday. We are still digesting a lot of information that's come out of this session, a lot of changes for school districts. And just let you know, the PowerPoint that we sent out in your packet, it has been updated some, so there'll be a few pieces tonight that you'll see that weren't in the packet on Friday night. Okay. So we're going to start with what we know of, on the revenue side, what's happened this legislative session. First of all, the formula allowance for education is 4% in the first year, 2% in the second year. And this, I guess I want to say, this is something that doesn't usually happen. If we look back over the years, we usually get about 2% when we look at the inflation piece that comes forward to school districts. So to actually receive 4% from the state of Minnesota is large, or it's a big deal. I've never ever seen it, and it's probably a once in a lifetime thing, especially as we look at the second piece. And the second piece is the special education cross subsidy. Right now, our cross subsidy, we get about 6% of our cross subsidy, and that's moving to 41.5. If you remember, a couple weeks ago, we actually were talking with the higher numbers here. We're running around 47. But again, we're at 41.5. This does increase to 50% when we get to fiscal year 27. So there is some increases coming down the road, and it's a large piece of money. It's about $6 million.
I was going to ask, is it around 6 or 7 million?
But we'll talk in a minute what our issues are with the $6 million. TRA. This is something that, in order to beef up the TRA, go ahead. Oh, this is Teacher Retirement Association. This is a state program. Every teacher, well, every employee in our school district pays into either TRA or PERA, which is just a public employees. So anyway, there is some talk that this increase, because they want to beef up the TRA available for our teachers. They're moving the full retirement age from 66 to 65. So they're needing some more monies. Now they're talking about covering some of this for us, but we do not know what that is at this point in time. So I'm sorry we can't tell you that, but we certainly will report out when we know exactly what those are. So this is an issue we have with our with TRA. Now, compensatory, we were very concerned about compensatory as we went to free meals for everybody, because the free and reduced lunch count generates these dollars. So they've brought forward a hold harmless through fiscal year 27, where we're supposed to receive the same amount. There's actually a small increase here of $106,000 going into next year. So this is good news for us. Not a large number, but we were way, very concerned about the decrease, which we had estimated at the time about $750,000. So it looks like we'll be held harmless on that one and be at the same place. Now, our English learners, of course, we don't get enough funds for our English learner education, just like special education. But they have moved this from $704 per pupil that are eligible for English learner revenue and moved it to $1,200. So this generates about $190,000 for us. So this helps us because we definitely are short in this area as we try to go forward. Operating capital, we have a little small increase. We have a mandate to put in feminine product dispensers in all of our bathrooms from grade 4 through grade 12. So this is money they gave us to pay for those and get those installed. So that's what that's about.
Before, Bill, you jump on, you'll notice on the slide that those 3 areas that you just talked about last are restricted dollars. So those have to go, those are not general fund dollars. So for those people that may be watching at home, there's a difference in, those have to go specifically in those areas.
Yep. Sorry I missed that. If I didn't miss it, I tend to get ahead of myself, so, okay. A few other pieces. Transportation, there's a small sparsity increase, $6,000. I mean, we'll take it, but it's a small amount. Another piece that we don't have dollars for yet is dollars being allocated for both homeless and foster students that we transport. A few years back, the state decided not to cover foster students anymore. We had to cover the cost ourselves, and homeless, of course, we don't get enough to cover that either. So this is good news for us, but at this point, we don't know what that is or how much we might actually collect on that. So this is good news. Again, restricted dollars can only use for transportation for these particular students.
And Bill, just to clarify, there's not an amount there because we don't know what we're getting from the state yet. It's not because we don't have homeless kids, because we do have that we know of identified a couple hundred homeless kids right now, correct?
Yeah, we spend actually well over $500,000 on homeless transportation for students that, for some reason they became homeless while they were attending here. They're somewhere else now. We haul them here so they can finish their education here in Lakeville, so they're not having it forced into a new school.
Thank you.
So you could have to go to Minneapolis to pick somebody up,
Yeah,
possibly.
in some cases, we go a long way to pick some of these kids up. They have some long rides, but they do appreciate coming back to the place that they find familiar. But it is a cost to us that we don't have a way to pay for. Library aid. This is something new that wasn't on our radar. Again, it's not a huge number, but 200,000 is 200,000. The Teaching and Learning Department is looking at a plan of how we're going to use those dollars in our media centers going forward. The student support aid, we talked about this in the past too. We're eligible for 156.6 and a new support staff. We'll talk a minute. This is like a grant program. If they give us $1, we have to spend $3, and you'll see those dollars in a minute. So it's good, but at the same time, we have to have quite a bit of funds in order to participate in this program.
So can I ask a question about the library aid? So during our budget cuts, we made some cuts related to media. Would this help bring some of that back?
Well, I guess I don't want to comment directly on that because we don't have a plan together where we should try to allocate those dollars. There's many, many, many needs when it comes to our libraries. Certainly that's one of them.
Right, because some of them went down to like part-time and then we're covering multiple buildings, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some of our.
So it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks. Oh, sorry, Director Thompson, I didn't see the hand.
Are these amounts annual, or are these just a one-time payment?
Oh, these are annual amounts. Of course, the legislators can change their mind 2 years from now. That happens sometimes. Things get phased out over a period of time. But these are all new and expected to continue.
Great.
But
So
that's
again,
not, just for clarity though, on the first slide, that wasn't true about the cross subsidy though, right? Or was it?
Yeah, because it went up to.
Because it's going up to 50%.
Correct, yes.
Yes, so it is ongoing at that point.
So
Okay.
190 for English learners next year, and until things change, and,
Yes,
and 156
and again,
for
that's a
student
formula
support.
by how many we have, and we tend to get more on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
so that'll grow, which will help us because to support those kids who need that help.
Okay.
We talked about this at the work session, authority to renew an operating levy by board vote. One thing we did learn, there's a very short window in order to do this, so it's something the board's going to have to decide. We need to renew our operating levy that's expiring this next year. It generates $3.2 million for the school district, and this is very essential monies, and we'll talk about this in our next presentation when we talk about our operating levies. But if we are going to take action as a board to renew it, which we have authority to do that one time, we have to do that before June 15th. Okay? Fund 4. We actually had some positive things happen in Fund 4. Early childhood screening is something we do every year. We barely find enough funds to try to support these kids that come in and need to be screened. We actually are seeing a 30% increase in these funds. But you can see with 15,000, we don't have very much to start with for the number of kids that we service on a yearly basis. So, but anyway, this is great news. Early childhood family education, it kind of matches the general education percentage increases. So it's about a $25,000 increase for our ECFE program. And then community education, a change in the levy from $5.42 to $6.35 per capita. That will generate $56,000 for the community ed fund. Again, this doesn't happen though till 25 because this is levy. The levy's already in place for next year, so this will be the year after. Adult basic education. We get paid for the number of hours that someone comes in to work on their GEDs, okay? So we get $22 for every hour somebody comes in and is receiving education in our ABE program. This is gonna move to $30, and this will generate another $7,500 for that program. Okay, now we want to talk about our unfunded mandates, which it's considerable and it's hard to see as we see some nice new revenue and what's happening. First of all, hourly unlicensed employees are now eligible for unemployment in the summer that work for school districts. This starts immediately as soon as school is out. Okay, we have estimated this cost at $3.5 million on a yearly basis. There is some money allocated, but we don't know how much is for us. There is some money allocated by the state for all school districts, but we don't know what we're going to get. So hopefully it's going to be less than 3.5 million, but this is a number that I don't want anybody to forget about as we look at the number, the revenue that we have received, that this really cuts into it. If you look at $6 million as new money that we didn't expect, well, here's over half of that out in the first item.
And not only that, like it could impact our hiring for the
Yeah.
summer, trying to find people
I
because
actually
they
put-
could make
yeah.
50%.
Under the notes, summer
Right.
positions are going to be very, very difficult to
Right.
fill. And we're not quite there yet to know how difficult that's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But like for ESY program, to have both teachers and paras come in and work that program is going to be difficult.
And Bill, do we know why, or superintendent, they did this?
Couple of reasons, from my understanding, is that they had pressure from associations to do this, that they felt like since they had some additional money, I guess this has been something that's been brought to the legislature before and has been failed numerous times, and so I guess they decided they would do this. But I would also say what that means when you talk about filling positions is that could impact our programming during the summer, what we have to offer our families and our students, which I don't know they took that, if they've taken that into account, because we have a lot of staff that work for us during the regular school year that would then fold over into the summer and offer a lot of opportunities for our programming, and now they may not have to. But there is still some catch and check and balances in it that we can offer positions. They have to fill out the paperwork. DEED has to then determine if they're eligible or not eligible. But it is a huge impact.
My
on us.
understanding is if we offer them a position and they turn it down, they're not eligible for unemployment most of the time.
Yeah, not necessarily.
There's exceptions, but.
Well, when we talked about this with AMSD, MSBA, MASA, almost every one of the groups that I've listened to, they say, yes, that is a possibility, but that's the but that always catches you, is that people can fill out the form and it's still up to that department, DEED, to determine if they're going to be eligible or not. And so there's no guarantee. It could be, because it used to be, you had to offer almost identical positions. And if it wasn't identical, then they would be eligible. And so since that's been some past practice, most of our positions during the summer are not identical to what people do during the school year. And so if it's not identical, I think some people may say,
Right.
there's the crack in the door for them to be able to have that opportunity. So we hope it's not $3.5 million impact to us, but even more importantly, we hope it doesn't impact a lot of the programming that we do through community ed and support for our students and kids during the summer. But we're just telling you right now that that's probably the most detrimental side to this, is that it could be a big impact on what we're able to offer. And that's going to freak out some families, because a lot of our families and kids do a lot of great stuff in our district during the summer. Sorry, rambled on that one.
Thank you.
The next line here is a family leave. If anybody's been following the legislation that, and this isn't just for schools, this is for the whole state of Minnesota, all larger employers. So if someone gets sick, they'll be able to have paid sick leave. In our case, lots of our sick leave is covered, it's in our contracts. But anybody who's not eligible for that now will be able to, it kind of works like unemployment. So if they need to be gone for a week because of whatever, they're sick or a dependent is sick, they can apply to the state of Minnesota and receive payment as if they were getting paid. And it's a smaller percentage than if they're regular pay. But what happens here, this isn't something that we just deal with each employee. Actually, everybody pays 0.35% increase in payroll tax. So it's the district's going to cost us about $350,000. But at the same time, this touches all our employees across the district. Everybody pays this 0.35% will be a payroll tax deduction out of their checks. So this will be a cost to everybody going forward. The READ Act. Again, not a lot of information here yet. A little bit of money has been allocated. We don't know what's available to us. We need to have a literary specialist. We're not sure if one's enough. We need more. We don't know. We don't know what kind of added staff is going to be with that. There's going to be a lot of staff development that takes place, so a lot of sub-cost when we take care of and doing that staff development for our teachers. So this is a considerable cost. Again, we'll bring it forward as we get a better idea of what this is, but considerable hours that our teachers have to be in, I'm not going to say class, but training in order to take this. And again, it's over a period of years. It's not just that one-time piece.
Director Thompson.
Part of our budget reduction, didn't we let go or discontinue a literacy role? Is that?
Yeah, there were small pieces all over that we made some cuts. But like I say, now we're going to be mandated to put some of these things in place without any funding. There is no funding.
There's no money.
I think what you're referring to is the structured literacy specialist, and I thought that person was let go, but they were looking to hire someone else for that role. Is that correct, Dr. McDonald?
As Emily comes forward, she'll answer that particular question, but you also have to know that it's very specific curriculum requirements, very specific training requirements, very specific things that are mandated to us from legislation, from the Department of Education, and where we can get that training and things. So it's painted us into a very narrow window of what we're able to do in regard to that. But for that position, back to the question about the reading specialist.
Yes, thank you so much. In terms of our reading specialist, our structured literacy specialist, that position was eliminated, and the work of that position was folded into a broader curriculum coordinator position for next year. So it was part of a restructure and a reduction of that particular position.
Okay.
Thank you.
Here I listed the TRA contribution increase again, just so you have an idea of the volume that's happening here. So the employer, we're going to get a 0.7% increase to all eligible TRA members. This will cost the district about $570,000. Again, we've been told there is some money allocated to cover this, but we do not know what that amount is yet. So our hope is not a full 570, but there's going to be some cost to us. This does start a little farther down the road. This isn't something that happens this September, but it's on the horizon and it's coming. And you'll see here too, the employees are going to pay another 0.2% also out of their own checks. So this applies to all teachers. Another piece, earn sick and save time. These are employees, they're part-time employees. So as long as they work here at least 80 hours in a year, then they're going to be eligible for sick time, 1 hour for every 30 hours that they work. And we have a lot of part-time people, especially when we look at our community education area. And we have a lot of support people in our elementary schools that are not working 6 hours. They're working 4 or 5 hours. So all these people will be eligible now for sick time. A minimum here, our first estimate's here at 130 hours. That's about $120,000. Again, no funding for this. I mean, I have not even an idea some funding's coming for this. So another thing we're trying to get a handle and find out exactly who's going to be eligible and what we'll be paying out. And what it really is right now these people, if they did get sick, they're gone a day, they don't get paid. So now they'd have sick time, and we would pay out that day, where we don't do that now. Student support aid. We talked about this a few slides ago with about $150,000 that was available from the state of Minnesota, but we got to pay $3 for every $1 that they give us. So that's a $468,000 hit to our general fund in order to participate and get those employees on. So again, if you look through this list and we talk about that $6 million that we received on the first page, most of it's used up with these amounts here that are here. So very frustrating. But we have the 4% for this year, but that's really all we have. Most of it's getting used up. But I will bring forward any money that we learn exactly how much we get in each of these areas. We will let you know what that is.
Director Thompson?
Thanks for the overview. And so for clarification, you said that for the 4%, it's going to be roughly, what, $6 million in additional revenue?
No, the 4% is around just under $4 million.
$4 million, plus all the other extra revenue. So we're looking at a total of, just ballpark, is it 10 or something?
Yes, it's about $10 million.
But then the following year, it's a 2% increase. So then that should drop it down to roughly $8 million in revenue-ish.
Not really, because
the
special
next
ed
year
goes
we
up.
won't get the special education as new. We'll get the same, but it won't be any new money.
Got it.
Okay, it's only going to be that 2% in the second year.
Which is roughly.
That's it.
Okay, and that's about roughly $2.5 million.
Just under $2 million.
Got it. So we'll get $10 million the first year, $2 million the second year. All right. And so, but our expenses for next year is roughly $6 million.
Just on this.
On the unfunded mandates that we have got to figure out how to do. Okay. So we're net positive $4 million. Ideally, give or take, let's say $1 million for unknown, whatever. Okay.
Correct.
So thanks for that. So we got, let's say, $3 million to be on the safe side, and with a $185 million budget that we have in our expenses, we've got what, $2 million projected in our savings account so far for June. And so keep in mind that's 1% is what we have in our savings account. So for simple math, if you've got $10,000 a month in expenses, you have $100 in your savings account, just in case if something bad happens, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I want to acknowledge that because from my point of view, while we have all this additional revenue coming in, and we need to be mindful of what's a one-time expense, what's recurring expenses, but also making sure that we allocate and make it a priority to make sure our savings account gets taken care of, because having $100 in your checking account is not a good situation to be in. So if you have $185 million in expenses, ideally we want to have 10% in savings, which is $18 million. We have $2 million projected so far.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, I have one more slide for you.
I have one question.
Do we
Director
have any
Carly
idea
Anderson.
when we would hear about these addition, just because I know you're kind of shooting for the high end, I would guess, on some of these costs to our district, just to prepare us that that would be.
I'll bring forward the conservative side. As you know, by the middle of June, I have to have a budget to you. So we will be budgeting on the conservative side, and as soon as we know what things are exactly, we'll use those new numbers.
Well, and Bill, to Carly's question, we usually don't get the numbers from the state until July or August, right?
Sometimes in the past when they can't agree, yes, we've gone into July, later July even sometimes.
And with all of this, my guess is it's going to run a little later than earlier, just because this is a lot compared to what they usually do. But it's usually July or August when we know what the numbers are.
It's really going to depend because several of those allocations flow through different departments. So some of them are in Department of Ed, some of them Department of Labor, some in Department of whatever DE stands for. I can't remember what that stands for. So we may get something from one, not from another. Then you have to figure that's not the only legislation that they're dealing with related to, they got other legislation outside of school districts. So depends on where we are in the pecking order of how quickly. Department of Education, we should get more quickly than we'll get from some other areas. Normally, that's how it works.
Which is still the point that people can be reaching out to, our local representatives and others, just in terms of trying to cover some of these costs, correct?
Okay, well, I don't think your representatives aren't going to know the amounts. It's the departments that are going to have to do it. In the case of the family leave, that's going to be a new department. They have to build that whole department.
Yeah, our representatives don't have any sway over. They're the ones who put these things together. They already voted and passed it, and now they handed it off to whoever else has to then figure it out. So I think we can say thank you, but we can say that thank you, but because we're appreciative of everything that we get, but we're also need to help them remember that they put some other things in place that they kind of gave with one hand, but are taking with another. And so that's a challenge for us. So as Bill said, in his time here, this is my first year here, but I've never necessarily seen it in other states where it's been quite as drastic that you've gotten a pretty good increase, but then you were hit with a lot of other things that took away the increase. And so we'll just have to be mindful of that. Hopefully these numbers come out a little bit better than what we're projecting, but you just need to know that there's a chance that, as Bill said, a big chunk of what we were given gets given right back.
Director Thompson.
So we've got about 5.5 million of unfunded mandates. We have $2 million in the bank for savings, in our savings. Will we have enough money to fund some of this? Do we get the funding right away to buy these things, or do we get paid at the end of the year, or can we go into negative? I don't know.
Cash flow wise, sometimes we get close to that zero mark. They meter money out to us over the year. So we do start getting it right away.
Okay.
Not necessarily in July, but we get to August, we start getting some funds in because we have to make our payroll, right? They meter that out through the year. It's very slow, of course. And when we get to November, because everybody's paying their taxes, and we get the money from the county, and same thing happens in May. So it's cyclical how we get that from them.
The biggest one will be the unemployment, because what I've heard is that it's got to be reimbursed. So we're going to have to figure out how do we keep track of what we've had to pay out, and then we'll get reimbursed for it. So that'll be the one that's the largest ticket item, but it's also the one that has the most moving parts for us to find out who is, who isn't. We got to pay, then we get reimbursed.
That's one positive. It hurts the staff in the summer, but if we get reimbursed, that will help.
Yeah, well, they're going to there is some money set for this. We don't know what the dollar amount is, but whatever it is, we have to pay the employee, and then we'll get reimbursed after the fact. So we have to Brian's question, if we get hit with $3 million worth of unemployment that we have to pay this summer, I don't have $3 million. We don't have $3 million in the bank to pay and not get reimbursed. Does that make? I think that's kind of what Brian was asking with this question.
We don't have a lot. We don't have a lot of wiggle room at all, and so concerning. That's all.
I agree. It's concerning. Okay, couple other things to touch on. This really is touching our Fund 4 again, our community education. There's a new requirement for licensure in the pre-kindergarten areas where that isn't there now. So I think we're going to have a lot of pressure with increased salaries for them there. And of course, their programs are barely breaking even at this point in time. In the general education area, there's new courses that are mandated that we have to do. There's standard changes. So we have a lot of curriculum writing to do, which will take a lot of resource, plus whatever we need for those classes. The students are going to lose electives because there's going to be more classes they have to take. They'll have less choices. And that's passed. We can't change that. In EML negotiations, now we have to negotiate class size ratios as part of our negotiating process. So is that going to, touch us with new positions? We don't know. Again, that would be more cost for us. And same with the student testing that happens during the year. That program is negotiated now with the EML members.
And this is only referring to class size ratios for general education classes, is that correct?
Well, I don't have the detail, so I don't know if it's going to be other departments too, or if
Okay.
it's just going to be general education.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that clarified because, like, for example, a band class is larger than a regular education
Right.
class. So, and special education, of course, is off of hours more than it is class size and needs of students. So there's several variables that are questioned. So we're waiting on money, but we're also waiting for clarification on Department of Ed on how some of those are going to pan out. And there was a third one. What was it? Class size, student testing. I thought there was a third.
There's an e-learning piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're not sure, how that's going to.
Because there are several classes at the high school that are co-taught too, even at our middle school level, so, yeah. Director Lind?
I assume all student testing isn't going to be negotiable because the state requires testing in the MCAs, for example.
I don't know, again, we don't have the details. I
Yeah,
wanted
it
to make sure
doesn't make sense
you
that
saw
they
that.
would-
So it's hard to understand what exactly that means
Yeah.
until we understand better.
Yeah, the initial swing at it would be whatever your state or whatever your district does for additional testing above and beyond state testing. So like when we do pre-assessments on students for reading, then we do mid-year assessments and end of the year. There's multiple assessments that we use for our testing within several different areas in teaching and learning. So that's a component that you think they're talking about, but we haven't gotten the clarification on the state side of it yet either.
And that's more so in the primary grades, too. There's a lot more testing.
Yeah, normally, it's at the elementary level that you have more of that testing taking place.
Okay, and then the last one I have here, there's some new discipline rules, which we're trying to figure out exactly what that means. But looking at, we probably are going to need some more support positions because of it. So I don't have any details. I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to list it so at least you were aware.
Yeah. And what he's really talking about there is there's some language of non-exclusionary discipline that, for example, you can't suspend a student is really what they're talking about. An out-of-school suspension type situation is what a majority of that focuses on. So it's say you had a student do something and you normally would have them go home. There's some language that we have to walk through yet, and you can't have exclusionary practices. So that means the student would have to be within the system someplace, which who's going to watch that? That creates a staffing situation.
Director Thompson?
So I noticed that you don't have an amount listed, and I'm assuming we could probably guess. I mean, I don't know if you can even guess, but the 5.5 million that we already uncovered from the previous slide, and 6 million potentially 2 years later, because it increases with the, I think was it the TRA or something increased, but yeah, you're looking at easily maybe another close to $1 million in additional unfunded mandates just on this slide alone.
Yep.
Okay.
Again, until we know what those supports have to be, we really can't put a number on it, but we will bring it forward as soon as we have it, so you have a good piece of information.
And I think on the top one, when you're talking about the licensure requirement, there's a fairly significant difference in what you pay our early childhood teaching staff as compared to a kindergarten teacher. And this language puts them within the same parameters that there could be conversation about putting them on the teaching schedule, which if you do that, that basically doubles that.
The cost.
But again, that programming is all contingent on, is it self-sustaining? And if you're going to be paying that much more, you may be shrinking the opportunity for students within our system. So there are some troubling things in some of these unfunded mandates that are there for us.
Director Thompson?
Just out of curiosity, how many staff do we have that are in pre-kindergarten? in the space? Do we just?
That's a good question. I
don't know.
do not have that
Okay,
number.
that's fine.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for that information, Bill. Do you want to move on to your next presentation, which is the operating levy renewal?
Okay. This is almost the same as we talked about at the work session, but we thought we'd bring it forward so the public can see this information. Because as we've been talking, you know that we have an operating levy that's expiring, and we really need to renew it. So we wanted to talk about some general and state funding and how that ties to our operating levies. So we're going to look at an overview of the levies we have in place, and then the renewal options that we have for that 2013 levy that's expiring after this next year. Community survey, new operating levy, the planning for that, and then we're talking about some next steps going forward. So due to unstable state funding and federal funding, school districts really rely on operating levies now to help provide students with high-quality education. Operating levies are used to support our day-to-day operations in our district. You know, it's not just staffing, it's also some supplies. The amount of the levies determined by the school district and is typically based upon the budget needs and tax tolerance. So that's one reason we do our surveys. So it's what are the community actually willing to do when it comes to an operating levy? What are they willing to pay if we talk about an increase in tax? Levy funding is per student or pupil unit, as we talked. We do get paid by pupil unit, so remember our 7th through 12th graders, we get a 1.2 weighting. So our pupil unit's a little higher than our regular ADM enrollment count. We can only do this in November. All operating levies is November only, new or renewal. And then they're typically for 10 years. That depends on the board at that time. You can certainly plan to have it less than 10 years, but 10 is the maximum, and then you have an option to put an inflation factor on those operating levies. And here at Lakeville, we have put an inflation factor on that. The school board must formally call for an election before there can be an election, and that happens during the summertime, so they put everything in motion for the fall in November. Now here is the example why school districts look at operating levies. You look at the blue line. Since 2003, that's the inflation rate going forward. And the red line is, of course, what the state of Minnesota gave us. You see now, this past year, in 2023, that's a difference of $1,263 per pupil unit. That's $16.5 million that we would have more if the state would at least followed the inflation rate. And the second piece that touches our operating levies, of course, because we get paid by pupil unit, is our increased enrollment. So this is our latest projection with our enrollment. We're seeing about a 2% increase there. So that does affect our operating levies because we get paid by pupil unit. I wanted to talk briefly on property taxes. I think a lot of community members think that what they pay in property taxes funds the schools. And it's actually a relatively small amount when we look at our operating levies. You can see here property taxes in the general fund is at 24% of our total budget. And the state, of course, is at 69, pushing 70% of those funds. You can see the federal source is a very small amount that we actually get. We talk about federal dollars a lot, but it's a very small amount that we actually receive and are being able to use. When we push this forward and look at the property tax components in the general fund, you see that the operational levies we have in place is about 45%. So we look at our total budget, our operating levies are about 10% of our total general fund budget. So a relatively small amount when we look at our total operating dollars that we use. Now here over the last few years, well that's about 13 years, you see these are the levies, the bond referendum that the community has voted on, along with a capital projects levy. If you remember back a couple of years, we didn't have a renewal of the 2010 operating levy. That's because the state of Minnesota understood that they are underfunding schools. So they allowed school districts without an operating levy to actually levy up to a certain amount, which is the local optional revenue piece. But school districts who had a levy we had to take the levies we had and put in LOR. So we didn't need to renew it because it just turns into a permanent state levy. Okay, now, this is for reference. You see that our capital projects levy is coming up pretty soon. It needs to be renewed. That's the money that we use for our devices, for our students in the district. You see we have had a couple bond referendums the last few years. In 19, we had a bond referendum of $42.9 million. That was for several projects we did. It was the turf fields, it was the new pool, it was our security project. So, and then in 21, of course, that's for the brand new school that's being built right now. This is Highview Elementary School. When we look at now just the operating levies and what's current, the new number for LOR is 724. So when we look at our 2013 operating levy that started at $540 that everybody voted on, but because we have to move over up to the $724 into LOR, the amount that actually is expiring that we need to renew is $245.92. Generates us $3.2 million. So again, this is the one we need to talk about, whether the board is interested in moving forward with a vote. What we would have to do is have a special meeting. We have to take comments from the public on actually going down that road and actually doing a vote instead of a election. Otherwise, we'd be called for election this summer and move forward with a renewal.
Director Carly Anderson.
If we had to have an election, how much money does that cost the district?
Well, election is pushing about $100,000 nowadays with all the pieces, all the people we have to hire. We have a lot of polling sites in this school district. So in order to fund all that, and we have to use equipment now. Nothing's paper ballot anymore. We have to use from the county. That's all it takes money to pay for that equipment and so forth.
But I think we'd have to have an election regardless because we would have to do this is just for the levy renewal. We'd have to do the election for the levy for the operating fund for the new elementary school, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
But keep
again,
in
we'll
mind,
talk about that in a minute.
If other entities, city, county, or anybody else is having elections, they help share some of that cost.
That is true. That is true.
And that's what I was going to say. Normally most elections, a lot of elections for counties and cities take place in even years. Not always, but we're for the most part an odd year. It looks like, so normally we're one of the few. So we do normally have a larger bulk to pay, unless somebody else decides to do something special on top of it. But so go ahead. I'll be quiet now.
Director Thompson.
So let me state this. So let me rephrase what I heard, or let me repeat what I heard. So there was a levy that was passed in 2013, needs to get renewed for another 10 years. We are not changing the original. We're not changing the amount other than how it may have adjusted due to inflation. We're not adding more money. We're not doing anything different. We're just renewing it to just continue on for another 10 years to fund our operations.
That's correct. A renewal just takes what we have in place now and moves it forward. So it doesn't change the tax impact for our community members. It's the same as it is now, except for the small caveat, like I said, our enrollment's growing, so there's a small increase to these levies.
But it would have increased anyways if with the enrollment going up. Now, if we did bring this out and then let's say it doesn't pass, then the district has to find $3.2 million to cut.
That's correct.
In addition, okay, all right.
I think it's important to note, though, that we do have a time constraint on this because to vote on it, we have to make that decision by June 15th. So that is something that the board is going to need to decide because we would have to call a special meeting to do that.
I think that's coming up on the slide.
Yeah, I think we have.
Just a comment regarding it's not going to increase taxes by voting yes because it's already there, but it will probably still, because of the growth of the community, reduce taxes a little bit. Isn't that correct?
Because it's spread out over more taxpayers.
Yeah, number one, we have growth in our community. So if the dollars are exactly the same, we would go down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, our enrollment's going up, so it's pretty flat.
Okay.
I don't think we'll truly see a decrease, but I don't think you'll see an increase.
Will be an increase, yeah. Thank you.
Well, typically, like I think what Terry's getting at is our levy referendums. When we go out there and say this is what will impact your annual, it's usually a little bit less than that, even because we've been growing so much in the community. It doesn't grow nearly as fast as our student base always does. So we do see a little bit of a net positive, but
And part of that problem is
it's hard
when
to
we
know.
bring that information forward, we're using a year-old tax material.
Oh, yeah, we can't say that.
So when the new one, right, we can't say it.
You can't say that.
No, but that's what
Can't
they
really
typically
speculate on what's
see.
gonna happen.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Director Thompson.
So the next step is that due to the laws that just recently passed, they've given the school board the authority to do a voice vote to renew it for the next 10 years, or decide to bring it to the community and let them choose in November for the $3.2 million renewal.
Correct.
Or a combination thereof.
Yes, if we're talking about a new one, which we'll talk about.
Or if you do a new one. Okay. Curious to know, like, what was approved in 2013? Like, what did we promote that we were going to do, that we were going to use this money for?
That's a good question. I didn't pull that forward.
Okay.
We can send that to you, though, of the materials that we used at the time.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to show this because, some people feel, we have lots of operating levies, but when we look at other school districts around us, now these are schools of like size for us. You see that some are at the cap. There is a cap in the state of Minnesota. You can't just keep, adding more and more levies. You can see that we're up over 2,000 for the cap, and we have districts on that. We're at $1,600. If we look at this average, if I take all the districts that are larger than ours and take an average of those 7 districts, it's about $407 per pupil unit, and that would generate us another $5.4 million going forward, just as a point of reference.
Additional 5.
Okay, again, the 2013 operating levy renewal generates $3.2 million for the general fund, and these funds are essential. They're an essential source of funding for our district at this time. This operating levy renewal will not increase tax on Lakeville area residents. And we've been talking about this. New state legislation gives local school boards the authority to renew expiring operating levies once instead of holding a special election. If you remember back with a survey we did in the late winter, if we had an election today, 86% of our residents would support an operating levy renewal. Of course, Morris Leatherman did that survey for us. And our history is we've always renewed levies. We haven't had a failed renewal. Okay.
Bill, can I step in? In 2013, voters approved a levy referendum that enabled us to avoid additional budget cuts, lower class sizes at the elementary level, and introduce STEM programming at the elementary level.
Now again, some information just on the ability now, the authority that the state of Minnesota has given school boards. You can consider a renewal by vote. But again, we have a short runway. This has to be done before June 15th. We will need to hold a special meeting in the near future with public comment for opportunity for people to voice their opinions on that vote.
So before they go on to that. So we don't necessarily need action, but I guess we need some consensus before we go on to this next particular item on what is your thoughts on that, because we'll have to make sure we get it posted one way or the other on what you want to do. And I think to Bill's point, the legislature obviously has heard about this over the years. They just didn't whimsically come up with, hey, let's just give them this. So I think there was quite a bit of conversation from my understanding on this taking place. So I guess we just need to kind of know from consensus that do you want us to start looking at the possibility of a special meeting. You have the 13th already set up for a work session. You could do a time in between your 4 to 8. You know, you could bump from, instead of 4 to 8, you can go 4 to 9 and do an hour special meeting in the middle of that if that's something you wanted to do. I just need to know if that's something you're interested in, to decide, you know, give the community an opportunity to share their comments, and then you decide if you want to do it. I wish I could give you more runway, but we weren't given more runway by the legislature.
I think we should do it on the 13th.
I agree. I would like to move forward with meeting on the 13th.
And I hate taxes, but I'm not going to go, I don't want to go through that budget cut again.
So do most people feel comfortable? At least that you still would have to vote to approve to do it. This just sets up the time to hear from the community. You'd get the resolution. This doesn't tie you into anything tonight. It just says, hey, we want you to put something in place. And to me, since you're already meeting on the 13th, that made sense to try to do that. But if you want another date, we can look at another date.
I think that works fine.
I agree. Yep.
Yes.
Director Thompson?
So June 13th is when we would decide and vote on?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
because the deadline was the 15th?
Correct. You have to have it done by the 15th.
Got it. So I would like to learn more, and thank you for the levy update, but I would like to learn more, what exactly did the voters approve on, 2013? Did we do, so that we get clarity around if we choose not to move forward and we move it to November, if it doesn't pass, that means, what I'm hearing so far, no STEM in elementary, that would have to get rolled back, because that's what the levy was agreed for.
It was
No,
for
it
the lower the elementary class sizes.
Class
So
size.
if
Class
I
sizes.
remember, like, we had made, there were some budget cuts that had to be made, and then our elementary class sizes increased. Like, I just, off the top of my head, I remember my son's 5th grade class was 36 students, I think.
Yeah.
So it was to bring the class sizes back down to what would be manageable. And at that time, the board made some recommendations on, or voted on something
And
around class sizes.
if we don't go forward with renewals, or if levies fail, we're not bound to what the dollars were originally used for when they were first put into place. Levy referendums are in general used for operations of the district, and as things evolve, those dollars evolve on how we need them. And so if they don't move forward, it's not that STEM comes out, it's that we would have to make some reductions or changes throughout the programming, wherever we may see fit, like we did this last time.
3.2 million.
Right,
Yes.
right, but that's
We
what
can
happens.
get
It's
you
not-
that, we can get you what it was talked about in 2013, but to what you just said is accurate.
Yeah.
10 years ago and what you do 10 years today
Yep.
is probably different. So that $3 million is going to impact.
But it's out there on the, I mean, we have it on the website, and
We'll
it's
get that
available,
information.
and,
We'll
yeah.
get that to you.
Yeah.
So what I heard was, at least I saw a majority of people kind of nod. Again, you're not approving anything.
Were you okay with the meeting?
Look at the 13th, pull the data for you, and be able to establish that time so we can get public comment if people want to have comment. I'm going to put probably 30 to 45 minutes as that window of time for public comment, and then, so give you an hour for that meeting, because then you'll have 15, 20 minutes to discuss and do what you want to do. Does that work?
I think
Okay.
we're all.
Yeah, I was
okay
just
with
going to
that.
say, I think we have to be pretty tight around that time frame, just to make sure we can cover everything else we're wanting to cover in that meeting.
Okay, we will get that taken care of. Thank you. Go ahead, Bill, I'm sorry.
Okay, in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to have Stephanie go ahead and bring this forward. We'll talk about the survey that's going forth next week.
Thank you. So when planning and considering a new referendum request, it's really the school district's responsibility, the school board and administration, to gain insight from its community. In order to do that and engage our community, we use scientific surveying and have predominantly worked with companies like Baker Tilly or Morris Leatherman. So we will be relaunching a survey beginning next Tuesday to further assess where our community is at with what their values are, test some referendum components, predominantly the Highview Elementary staffing need, and then overall tax tolerance. We last surveyed our residents in January, and Peter Leatherman came and reported to you all in February, and we reported out to our community after that. So residents may receive another phone call. It's essentially 500 phone calls, which is a sample size of the voter file. Residents who receive a call, we really encourage them to participate. We want to hear from our community and understand where they're at and what they value. And then as far as next steps from there, Morris Leatherman and the administration would come to the work session on June 20th to present findings from the second round of surveying and to present recommendations for a potential fall levy request. So with that, I think we're ready for any questions you may have.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, thank you. What is the cost for something like this, out of curiosity, for these surveys that we do?
Yeah, thank you for that question. They really range on the sample size and what we're surveying on. This one I would definitely want to check, but essentially they can be from $10,000 to $30,000 depending on what we're actually surveying.
Okay.
Director Thompson?
No. So I asked because I'm wondering if it's even warranted. I mean, the reason I asked is because it's like we have to fund a new elementary school. So it's either you fund it or you don't, and if you don't, the building sits still. So it's not a really too difficult decision on that one. But if we're looking to gauge our community's tax tolerance to potentially increase additional levies or have an additional levy, then it might make sense to do another survey. I guess I'm trying to understand because how are the findings going to be drastically different from the findings that we did in January or February? Because it's only been 3-4 months since. So those are just a few thoughts that I'm thinking of. That's all.
Director Carly Anderson?
I think one of the things we talked about in one of the work sessions or something was looking at, in terms of the tax tolerance, what people might be willing to tolerate in terms of increase. Mm-hmm. So that would be, I think, the major helpful thing for us to understand is what we ask for in the fall. Am I remembering that correctly? I mean, I agree with you that we were going to ask about Highview regardless, but whether we ask for additional.
Director Kelleher?
I think the purpose of the community survey isn't just about the renewal and about the operating. We also, in our work session, you're right, Carly, we also talked about additional operating revenues that might be needed because of what is coming down. Even though we are getting funding from the state, there's a lot of unfunded mandate and other costs that we're going to have to be responsible for that will not be covered by all the revenue we're getting from the state. And so I think that's very valuable. I think it also does it helps to educate an awful lot of connected people to the community that we are doing a referendum and a levy or potentially doing one and what it would be for. It helps to educate those people, and it gives us the information and the detail that we need so that we can do a successful levy. Because if we're going to invest $60,000 to $100,000 to do a referendum, we wanted to try to be as successful as possible, so we're not throwing those dollars away. So we see a lot of learnings and benefits to doing these surveys, and there's so much more than just referendum information that we gather from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll get a general understanding on sentiment if things have changed from last year to early winter to May of 2023. We'll learn a range of where our community's really tax tolerance is at. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. And then we'll hear about different priorities that they may want us to consider in addition to Highview funding, and if there's any tolerance for above and beyond that.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, I agree that I think having 500 folks as a sample size would be just a variety of people, and some may be connected, some may not. But when we think about the tax tolerance, I think it's good to understand that. But again, what problem are we trying to solve? Are we trying to just find out how much money that community members are willing to absorb versus what problems are we trying to solve at the district level? Do we have a shortage in kindergarten students or kindergarten staff? Do we have busing issues? Do we have whatever? I think those are the kind of questions that we ought to be asking if we're going to do a survey, so that we can put something tangible to the survey versus what tax tolerance are we comfortable with, and then deciding what to do with that money. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So,
it does,
I'll
but I
pause there.
think, if I'm not mistaken, the structure of the surveys get to those points. It's not just about tax tolerance. How many questions are usually on the survey?
Yeah, when we did our community survey last year, we had over 100 questions.
Yeah.
At that time, it was really about our desired daily experience with the strategic plan that was coming through. We had a new superintendent coming on board, so gaining sentiment of things that he may need to know as he was starting his position here. And overall priorities at the time. So that's really the beauty of surveying on an annual basis, is we can structure the survey for what the planning needs are of the district. At this time, we have Peter really focused on overall sentiment and, of course, a potential levy request.
100 seems like a lot, though.
It was a lot.
Well, there was a
and
lot going on.
unusual.
I skip 100
Well,
questions.
I mean, this one won't be that long.
Thank you. Yeah, this one will be about 30 questions.
Yeah, this one won't be that long, but there was a lot going on at that time, and it was a very valuable survey, and it gave us a lot of great data.
I didn't say it wasn't. Please don't do 100.
Director Carly Anderson.
Is there any way to get a sneak peek about how people are feeling about the levy renewal before we have the 13th meeting? Is any of that date? I know we're not having a presentation until the 20th, but is there any information we can glean from that?
Yeah,
before?
I did ask Peter when we can expect to gain information back. Of course, he'll be calling, and it's really about reaching all of the residents as he can. And then he puts a report together for the administration. So I'm sure Dr. Van Zyl, if you'd like to provide that to them ahead of time.
Yeah, if we get that information, it really depends on how quickly he turns around, how many people take the survey. So when we get that information, we don't have a problem sharing it. The other component is you have to remember things have drastically changed from when we called in January. We went through $7 million budget reductions. The economy is a little bit different than what it was at that time. So I think that we have to be mindful of that process as well. And you can't necessarily drill down into every specific thing to ask a question about, hey, would you like this? Would you like that? So you have to run some general questions out there, like when we're talking about student support services. We're not going to be able to spell out what all those things are because there's a lot of things that are there. It could be social emotional help. It could be social workers. It could be counselors. It could be behavior support interventionists. It could be, so the more things you list, you run into a 100-question survey. So you do have to start out with a little more general, normally is what my experience has been, that has some understanding of what the community may want to support. Normally, that's what you find out is what are they willing to support, because the last thing you want to do is turn around and run a referendum and then turn around and say, oh, now we need to run a referendum again because we didn't get enough. So that's why you want to make sure you know what that tax tolerance is within your community so that you're not always beating people up, even though they feel like we are. On a regular basis.
I agree. I completely understand it, but I think it's important that we also understand what are our top 4 or 5 issues that we need to solve within the district, within the school. Number one, our savings account is not very good. We've got busing issues and so forth. We've got user fee issues. Do we have not enough? Are the class sizes too big? But I understand, and I just want to be mindful that it's good to know that we know what our top 3 problems that we need to get solved in the district that is a priority. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I understand that. I would say some of that is still a little bit unknown because if we go through negotiations and class sizes really become a sticking point, that's one thing as compared to where we are now. We try to manage and operate through those things as well. So some of the things that you may say are the burning 3. I never would have told you 4 months ago that class size ratios were going to be something that I thought was going to be a major issue for us, but it could be. So now that legislation has changed, so you have to know that spectrum of what you're able to operate in, because sometimes those things get handed to you, mandated to you, that you weren't thinking were coming down the pike.
Director Carly Anderson.
Isn't it the case that we do have surveying at the end of the year, or some point, that doesn't have to do with this organization, that the district does, to also get information back from parents about what their concerns are and things like that?
Yeah, in the past we've done, we've called it our panorama survey, and that has really been more about the desired daily experience of our families. We have put that on pause as we're overall reassessing our survey plan based on some policy changes by the school board.
Okay.
Any further questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next section is reports with recommended actions. We'll start with the arena's annual report and 2024 budget with Joe Berquist. So with these reports, the board will have to vote after each one for approval. So we have 3 of those reports tonight.
Madam Chair, board members, thank you for having me again. I was here earlier this week, as you know, and I'm here for public benefit tonight. So I have a, let me find it. Do they have it up?
They'll be, are they getting it up, Bill?
Let me find it here. I don't know.
Across the top. I think this is right there.
Oh, the PDF. Okay, I was looking for a PowerPoint. I apologize. Looks like you had some updates were successful. All right, I'm here for the annual arenas report and budget presentation. Are we good to go? There we go. There we go. I'd like to start out first thing with just explaining a little bit about the arenas board. Many people do not know in the public. In fact, I was asked tonight, what are you going to a school board meeting for? We are actually a joint powers entity that is operated by the school district and the city of Lakeville. So we are essentially a separate business. We are charged with operating our facility with the revenue that we take in. Each year, we pay all our expenses through that. We transfer about $140,000 a year into a capital reserve fund to help pay for larger projects. And we contribute right now about $78,000 towards debt service on some of the projects in the past, which included a parking lot and so forth. The city of Lakeville contributes about 50% of the debt service towards the Hasse Arena when it was built, as does the school district. Also, in 2021, we had an energy improvement project of $8.1 million to bring the facilities up to speed. Both the school district and Lakeville, or the city, both contribute towards that as well. In addition, this past year, the city has approved funding to help pay for an expansion of Hasse Arena for an outdoor pavilion rink. Whoops. I had this problem the other night, didn't I? Anyhow. Okay.
Yeah, instead of the mouse, you can just use the arrow on the keyboard.
This is just one of the things with the financial. I just mentioned what the city does, what Lakeville Arenas pays for, and so forth. We also have our users who are big contributors. Lakeville Youth Hockey they purchased a $100,000 training center that basically has been donated to the arena facility. They paid for that improvement. They paid for $700,000 in the parking lot improvements. They just contributed $1.35 million over the next 20 years, 24 years, I believe it is, for the expansion project of the outdoor rink. In addition, they're contributing another $100,000 this year in improvements. So our users are very involved as well as Heritage Figure Skating, who is primarily Lakeville residents. And they're contributing $100,000 towards the past parking lot project in 2020, and another $175,000 they've committed towards the Hasse outdoor rink. A little bit of review, 2022, I'd like to consider a breakout year for us. We set all kinds of new records, everything from our ice revenues to programming sales to daily concession sales. It was a really good year for us. It kind of kicked us off to what we think is bigger and better things moving forward. Total hours rented, hours rented is really 80% of our income, so it's our biggest piece. In 2022, we set goals to increase. We had 5,049 hours rented in 2022 compared to 4,600 in 2021, and we beat the all-time record set back in 2019, which was 4,100. So we're close to $1,000 or 1,000 hours up. We continue to expand and do things that's going to improve that greatly, which again helps bring down costs and helps us improve the facilities. How we did it, some of the things were improved scheduling. We reduced resurface times. We increased off-season customers, which has been a big expansion that we're working on right now as we move forward. Rental revenue, similar to just followed right along with the hours that we used. Obviously, if I was up here and the revenue hadn't increased and the hours sold, you'd be questioning that, so I'd like to show both. But we were up, again, at all-time high of 1.1 million, over $168,000 over 2021, which was comparable to a pre-COVID years. Other rentals, it grew by about as much as 75%. That's customers outside the school district, outside of Lakeville Youth Hockey, and so forth. So that's been our biggest increase, and that's the area that our buildings tend to sit empty in the summertime, and we are pushing hard to fill our buildings year-round to take the burden off of everyone else and really the residents. Public use hours. We had significant number of public use hours. We expanded these areas quite substantially, especially public stick and puck, and the majority of our users are hockey players, and versus we do have a lot of open skate, but we really want to make the facility usable for the public. You can see there's 426 just in public youth hockey. Stick and puck is similar to that. That's 339 hours. Adult hockey sales. Public dead ice that just sits empty. We allow people to come in and skate on it, our users. So we really want the facility used. And if it's sitting there and we're here working, we invite the public into it. Our rental hours total, when broken down by both our customers as well as the public, Lakeville Youth Hockey is still our largest customer at 28%. They bought 1,970 hours in 22. Other sales is climbing, like I just mentioned earlier. That's almost matching Lakeville now, and we hope to supersede that in the summer months and maximize the facilities. And then the school district buys 817 hours per year, which is also a big benefit. Not only do you contribute to the debt, but you also purchase much needed hours that we otherwise wouldn't be able to sell. And all the others are there broken down. In 2022, revenues I mentioned, ice rental was up $168,000. Program and events were $139,000 compared to $85,000 in 2021. Concession revenues were up $72,000. We're at $72,000 compared to $26,000, which had been an all-time high in the past, and that's simply because we're open all the time now. Pro Shop is
and you've really done a nice job updating them.
Thank you.
Yes, that too.
Yes, we have done a lot of upgrades to concessions, and ultimately my public side of the business, I prefer to use that to pay our part-time staff, and then we use our ice rentals to pay for our full-time staff members. So concessions, all that other stuff is only 20% of the budget, but it's extremely important to us because it provides us that extra labor to really provide better service and customer service. Advertiser revenues were $39,000, $8,000 over budget, and total revenue overall was $1.4 million compared to a budget of $1.2 million, and that was $225,000 over all-time high in 2019. Expenditures in 22, $490,000 in salary expenses. We've obviously been running shorthanded the last few years, but that is starting to improve, as you'll see moving forward on the next slides. Commodities, $9,800 below the amended budget. Overhead expenses, $118,000 in 2022, $9,300 under budget. Contract expenses, $172,000 was over budget a little slightly. Utility expenses was a big one that was over budget considerably, which we don't have control over, complete control over. There are things we're trying to do, and the new project at Hasse will help us with that. Interest and debt service, last year we only had $14,000. This year that will be up to $78,000 with the new debt service on the 2021 improvement project. Our reserve fund continues. We put $140,000 a year away in reserve fund. Total expenses were $1.3 million. Net profit was $46,000, a little higher than we like to be. Again, we like to break even or close to break even, but we like to have a little bit left over. But we were going a little bit high because we did have some losses, obviously, with COVID that we're trying to rebuild our coffers a little bit each year. 2023, part of the budget process is figuring out where we're at today and moving forward because the budget was done quite a while ago and things changed considerably. Construction of the outdoor rink was not in the budget at the time. We didn't know it was going to be happening, and that has changed. So we're going to be doing a lot of painting inside. We're rebranding Hasse Arena to match the South colors and the Cougars, just like we did Ames Arena, which is the home of the North. So we feel very strongly that each arena should represent their home school in the main rink. We are also installing a new set of dasher boards, a new camera system, and some other planned expansions at the rinks. Our estimated budgets, we did have to do a budget amendment because of the changes. There was revenue budgeted for tournaments and so forth that had to be pulled out. Now that we know our debt service payment commitment at 63.4 was not budgeted, so we did do a budget amendment this year to adjust for all that. And these are just some of the numbers quickly on where we adjusted this year. Revenue estimates were still expected to be over budget, even though in a couple areas we backed off. So we're still going to exceed our budget for the year, which is good. Concessions revenue again, exceeding budget by $14,000. I think it's going to go even beyond that. We were very conservative on a lot of our cost projections this year and expenses. Total revenues this year are expected to be at $1.5 million and $4,100 over budget, $133,000 over last year. So it's kind of a even year when it comes to that, but we do think it'll go a little higher. Expenditures, salaries are, like I said, are back up. We held off because of the construction on some of the full-time staff replacements, so they'll come in below budget this year. And everything else will kind of come in similar to 2022, commodities, overhead, contracted expenses. Commodities will actually be up because we're retooling inside of Hasse, so we got some added expenses and so forth in there that we're taking advantage while we have the ice out and construction underway. We will continue capital expenses at $140,000, and total expenses will be $1.5 million, give or take, with compared to the original budget of $1.5. So we're close. Our net profit's going to be a little bit smaller, just because we had to make changes for the extra debt service payment and so forth that we're making. But again, we were conservative, and I'm confident we'll be fine. And that brings us to the budget for 2024. We're excited about 24. The new pavilion rink will open later this year. Hasse will begin year-round operations, which normally 7 months of the year it sat empty, other than a few items, so that will help our revenue situation. The pavilion rink activities, we have them planned for now. We will be doing outdoor things, whether it be, I think we're going to add some turf in the spring, host some concerts and assorted different venues, maybe some pickleball. We'll see. I know that's popular now. We're going to be starting our new spring and summer tournament series next year in the off season. New summer activities, ice activities on ice. We'll be doing some internal camps and just overall continued improvements. We still have a lot of aging equipment that hasn't been replaced yet, from rooftops to a lot of that sort of thing. And Hasse is actually starting to get to that point where Ames was, where it was starting to age out. So we still have a lot to replace. But with the new revenue, we hope to do a lot of that internally. So overall for 2024, 1.4 million in ice rentals is expected, and that's very conservative because we don't have the tournament revenue in there just because it's unknown, so we didn't want to add it without knowing what it was going to be. Program and events, 183, we're keeping that. That'll be slightly above last year. Concessions revenue is trending. We'll be at 116,000 is what we have budgeted, but again, if everything pans out, that will exceed. And just in general, we'll be at 1.73 for total revenue, which is about 378 over 2022, and that includes outdoor ice rentals, expansion year-round ice sales. So we're moving in a very positive direction. Expenditures will keep pace, obviously, especially in salaries. We'll see a jump quickly because we are going to adding quite a few full-time staff to accommodate HASI year-round operations. But as we move forward and revenues grow, that percent of revenue shall drop. Normally, we're right around that. I believe we're around 37% of revenue has been historic, 36, 37%. So it'll probably jump up around 39 for a short period, but if the revenues come in like we think, we'll get it back where it's always been, if not lower. And then commodities for the year, similar to what we're estimating this year. Admin overhead, similar again. Contracted expenses, that's actually planning to be down a little bit. We're eliminating some of our expenses. And then our debt service is obviously up. Capital expenses will continue at 140,000, but one of my future goals is to increase that because things are getting much more expensive. And as you'll see on my last slide, we're dipping our coffers a little bit low and this year to pay for some boards that need to be replaced or from a safety standpoint must be replaced. So net profit, we're around that break even, but we are very optimistic that it's going to exceed that. This is our capital reserve fund, which is separate. As you can see this year in 2023, we have $320,000 budgeted for the indoor boards at HASI, which I know the coaches and everyone are very excited about because it's gotten to a point where it's unsafe. We had an inspection done. It was going to cost us $60,000 just to bring it up to code. So we're far better off to get it replaced now while the construction's going on. So we'll dip down a little bit in that fund, but it'll come back up quickly as we contribute. And then in 25, you'll see out there, that's the new Zamboni that we found out is a year and a half out on when we placed the order for. So that is my annual report and budget. I want to thank everyone and any comments or questions.
Director Thompson?
Thank you again. And so I was trying to learn more because I was not aware of this partnership that we have. And so I'm selfishly asking, obviously with the district playing a part in the debt service, how does our school benefit from, or how does our district benefit in this partnership? Do we get like priority bookings or priority?
Yes, the schools are the top hierarchy.
Okay, so
the arena, public, like open skate and some of that stuff is number one. We have to keep that in there. But right now I'm in the scheduling process and high schools come first.
Got it. So the 817 hours that we get is
you get your choice. So I have to go through,
spot.
I book all the practices,
Fantastic.
I book all the game times first. And then even during the year, we tend to, if there's reschedules, everybody below gets moved and so forth.
Do we get a family discount too? Or
no, there's a standard rate across the board that it costs to operate. So
okay, so thank you for that. How did you guys increase prices? Is it because the utilization of ice went up, or did you guys increase your ice prices?
Prices, we've only been doing the $5 or $10 an hour, which is pretty consistent in the ice arena business. Okay. Now it's starting to be 10 this year. We're doing a $10 increase to match Farmington. But overall, our revenue growth is not from price increases. It's from utilization of the facilities and selling more products and more ice time.
Fantastic.
Director Shinley?
Just a comment. With the utilization of the upcoming spring and summer tournaments, I think that's going to be a huge positive. I don't know if anyone's been to hockey tournaments. We are at them constantly and every weekend. So if they're run smoothly and everything's being utilized, it doesn't only help the arenas, but it helps the community. with restaurants and things like that, because that's huge for teams. And so I think the revenues when it comes to your pro shop and the concessions you're going to see a great positive in that.
Yeah, we will have a big impact on the community as a whole. I came out of Breezy Point, which was in the hospitality industry, and we hosted 22 tournaments per year. Every single weekend, I filled the resort in Cross Lake and everything around us. So it will have a very big impact on Lakeville as a whole and the tax base.
Director Thompson?
Can I go back to that prioritization? So I'm glad that 194 is kind of on that top of the list. Curious, does the Lakeville Hockey Association get up there? I'm just looking at like their numbers. All right, 39% utilization is coming from them. So are they like number 2 on that priority list?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure we take care of our biggest client. They're like they generate $477,000. So just want to make sure we're good.
In fact, we just signed a new agreement or a new policy agreement with them as well, and they get their pick, and so they're taken care of well before everyone else, and then we drop down to the next.
Great.
And ultimately, there really are not a whole lot of people banging our doors. I mean, we could easily sell the local, but I mean, they are why we're here, and that's why I have a position. So definitely,
thank you.
Them 3 organizations up top.
All right, seeing that we have no more questions, we can go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the arena's annual report and the 2024 budget.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Director Kelleher. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Director Schindley. Any more comments or questions?
Great job on the budget. I see 10% in your savings account. Looking good.
All right, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, so excited for our next report is the Class of 2023 graduation list and request for approval from Kim Booty.
Good evening, Chair Baker, members of the school board, Superintendent Van Zyl, and members of the cabinet. I am Kim Booty. I'm the very proud principal at Lakeville North High School. This is one of my favorite times of year when we are able to see kind of the fruits of our work. I'm here to represent and present the class of 2023. I'm also representing a very proud principal from Lakeville South, Sean Murphy. As of tonight, we'd like to present 449 students from North High School, 476 students from South High School. Each of these students has met the requirements for the school, for high school graduation as established by this school board and the state of Minnesota. Graduation ceremonies for our Lakeville graduates will be held on June 8th. The South graduation ceremony begins at 5 p.m. and the North graduation ceremony begins at 8 at the Pavilion on the University of Minnesota campus. There will not be a limit to family tickets for the ceremony. At this point, I ask for your approval of 925 Lakeville seniors for commencement.
I'll make the motion.
I'll make a second.
So we have a motion by Director David Anderson and a second by Director Kelleher. I'll open it for discussion, and I just want to say that there are several board members that have relatives that are graduating. We just want to recognize that. I think Director Lind, you have a grandson, is that correct?
Correct.
I have a daughter that's graduating from North. Director David Anderson has a son that's graduating from North, and I think Director Kelleher has a
I have
relative
a niece.
too. A niece, all right.
At South.
We're super excited to make this vote tonight. So pending no other discussion on that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, graduates. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next recommended action would be policy update and grammatical and format change approval from Brenda Albrecht.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Van Zyl, and members of the school board. You have before you this evening a resolution allowing administration to make formatting and minor grammatical changes to all ISD 194 policies. This resolution would include formatting, minor grammar. Those changes would be brought or made prior to bringing forward to the work sessions. And also, we would be working on those prior to the policy committee meeting so that those meetings run a little bit smoother.
All right, do we have any questions relating to that? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the policy updates for grammatical and format change?
So moved.
All right, we have a A motion by Director Lind. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Director Schindley. Any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, so we'll put it to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, superintendent's report.
I'll make this very quick. You already know the graduation is coming up, so that means the end of the year is coming to an end as well. So it's hard to believe that we're winding down. Somebody had a count the other day. I don't know what the count is and how many days are left because I keep working. So, but it is great to know that our school year is coming to a close. Thank you again. I know we talked about our teacher of the year, our teacher appreciation month, but really every month should be teacher and staff appreciation for everything they do. Hopefully our parents and families realize that. And so there are a lot of things taking place. We have a graduation, or excuse me, a retirement event tomorrow, I think that you're aware of. We have graduation. Just please watch your calendar and emails because there are a lot of end of the year activities that you have been invited to in the past and will continue to be invited to. And other than that, we're just glad that the end of the year is almost here. It's been, of course, a challenging few months and appreciate everything that you do for us as well. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions from board members? All right. So hearing that and having completed all items on the agenda, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Director David Anderson. Is there a second?
A second.
Not sure where I got first. I think the second was by Director Thompson. Any other discussion on that? All right, so we'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. So this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you and have a great evening.